This is a meeting of the Ways and Means Committee of the Greenfield City Council. It is Tuesday, September 20th, 2022, and the time right now is 6:01. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This meeting is being recorded by the Ways and Means Committee. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time. Okay, I don't hear anybody. In accordance with MGL Chapter 30A, Section 20G, no person shall address a meeting of a public body without permission of the chair, and all persons shall, at the request of the chair, be silent. No person shall disrupt the proceedings of a meeting of a public body if, after clear warning from the chair, a person continues to disrupt the proceedings. The chair may order the person to withdraw from the meeting, and if the person does not withdraw, the chair may authorize a constable or other officer to remove the person from the meeting. I will do a roll call right now. Councillor Healy. Okay. Councillor DeSorger. Councillor Golub.
Here.
Councillor Toronzo.
I'm here.
Thank you. And I am Councillor Forgy. We do have a quorum. Hang on just a minute. Okay. There are no approval of minutes for this meeting, and there is no public hearing. So we'll proceed to business at this particular point. Under Section 8, our rules of procedure, I wonder if the committee is willing to waive the procedure, the orders of the motions right now, so that we could get to a presentation by Kelly Varner, our city treasurer, and Danny Letourneau, who's here with us as acting mayor this evening, so we can get this particular piece going and let folks go home for the evening if they so choose. So does everyone approve of that?
I do.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, and Councillor Healy, I see you have joined us as well.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, and we're just going to waive the, under Section 8, we're going to waive the rules tonight so we can have our discussion about tax title taking an additional collection of additional equity. So if that is okay with all members of the committee, and I don't see any objections, okay, we will go first to our discussion. And I'd like to thank Acting Mayor Danny Letourneau and our treasurer Kelly Varner for being with us this evening. I know there is a lot of discussion in the community about this issue. What I'd like to do right now is just turn that over to our treasurer, if that is okay with everyone, and have her speak to us about the whole issue of tax title and additional collection of funds by the city. There was some information that was sent to you as well. It was in an email to us today. There were 3 attachments to it that basically spells out exactly what the city policy is and what the protocol has been. I'm not sure if everybody's had a chance to really look at it, but Kelly, you can walk us through it. So thank you for being here this evening and welcome.
You're welcome. So the plan is I'm going to kind of walk you through the process that Greenfield follows, which is all in accordance with Mass General laws. And our attorney, Iris Leahy, is also here to walk you through the actual land court process once it kind of goes out of my hands and we start foreclosure proceedings. And then once she explains that, she can turn it back to me and I'll kind of go over what happens after the foreclosure process and when we sell properties and all of that kind of thing. So just to kind of briefly go through what I sent you guys earlier. And I sent it to you just so you have it for a frame of reference. Should you, because I'm sure you're not going to remember everything I'm going to tell you tonight anyway, because it's a lot of information. But so you have it to refer back to, should this issue continue to come up. But starting from the beginning, when the town starts the tax title process, we have to issue a demand for real estate taxes after the May 1st bill is due every year. You cannot do anything until you've done that. Demands can be issued the day after the due date, which means if they're due on May 1st, we can issue a demand on May 2nd. We don't do that. We usually give people some time to be able to pay in between issuing that demand notice. We usually give at least a week, maybe 2 weeks before we issue a demand. And then once the demand is issued, they have 14 days from that point to pay. Mass General Law says after that point, once the demand comes due, you're allowed to start the tax title process. So we're allowed to start placing the liens, doing the advertisement, all of that stuff. Greenfield does not do that. We try and give people more time to be able to figure out, their situation and whether or not, they can make payments or whatever. The first thing we do after the demands have been sent out, we give it a couple months and we send a first letter, which I provided to you guys, which basically says, hey, do you still own the property? Did you not know that you missed the payment? If you don't own the property, please let us know. It's, it's a very general notice that, hey, can you still see me? My screen just went weird. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, there it is. So the first letter basically just kind of gives you a heads up, hey, you still owe some money. Maybe you should take care of this. If it's not your property, let us know, that kind of thing. So we usually do that sometime in the fall, which is, a few months after we've already issued the demand notice. Sometimes people contact us and let us know, hey, I sold the property, it's no longer mine, somebody else owes the money, which is great. Then we can go after the person that actually owes the money. Sometimes that doesn't get people's attention. So we send a second letter in January or February, which is a little more stern and telling them, exactly what's going to happen if the balance is ignored, that they will be advertised in the paper, that they, risk having to deal with land court. And it kind of spells out what could happen should you continue to ignore the notice. Now, those two steps are steps that are not required by law. It's a courtesy that Greenfield does to try and give people more time to pay and to give you more of a heads up to try and get people to pay before we start any sort of tax title proceedings, because we don't want to take people's houses. We don't want to put them in tax title. We try to get them to work with us before we get to that point. If they don't contact us and don't try and do anything at that point, usually around March or April, we'll actually start the tax title process, which involves putting an ad in the paper, which I know everybody hates, but it's required by law. It's not something that we can, not a step we can skip, unfortunately. It's a lot of ways it feels like public shaming. I don't like it either, but again, it's just part of the mass laws that we have to follow. So we do that. Again, that could be done 14 days after the demand is issued. At this point, we've given them about almost a year past that point to try and figure out a way to come up with the money or make a payment plan so that we don't have to be in this situation. Once we post the notice, we have to put it in 2 different places so that it's public, which again is part of the law. It's not something that we're doing by choice. Everything that we're doing is in accordance with the law. And at that point, we have 14 days after the notice, 60 days after the notice is published to actually file the lien at the registry, which basically ensures the city's financial interest in the property. And once it goes, the lien is actually filed, it actually gets turned over from the tax collector to the treasurer, which is me with one hand to the other. So, and it goes, the interest rate goes from 14% up to 16%. Again, dictated by law, not something that we can change. And at any point in time, the taxpayer is more than welcome to contact us to make payment arrangements. We always try and point them in the direction of either the assessor's office for maybe there's abatements they can qualify for, or state programs that they may qualify for. Especially during COVID, there was a ton of programs out there that were available to help people pay mortgages, taxes, rent, all that stuff. But again, people have to contact us. We do all these letters and we try and reach out and do all these things to try and get people to contact us so we can help them and maybe point them in some sort of direction so that if they can't afford the taxes, that, you know, there can be some assistance. But unfortunately, I can't make people reach out to me. You know, I can't make people talk to me if they don't want to. So, you know, we do the best we can. And then after 6 months, after we filed that lien, we can start the process in land court, but we do try and give them more notice, which Iris will go over with you. You know, we send a couple more letters before we actually file a petition to foreclose in the land court. And land court's not a quick process. I mean, it takes many, many years. You know, the court is very favorable to the property owner. So they get a lot of chances typically in land court to figure things out. So at this point, I'm going to let Iris talk about the court process, because that's the next step in the whole tax title process.
Hello,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Hi,
Hi.
Iris Leahy. I represent the town of Greenfield in their tax title foreclosure matters. I agree with the things that Kelly was saying, and she touched on a few parts of the land court process, and she's right, it is a long process. It's not something that happens quickly to get a final judgment in the land court. So when I get a list from Kelly of the property owners that have balances in tax title, I will usually go through and send out letters based on usually the highest balance owed. Or sometimes there are, you know, like people that have been in tax title multiple times, and I'll recognize a name and I have a relationship with that person. I know that they have a seasonal business and they have a hard time paying. So, you know, depending on if I recognize somebody and I think I can, you know, maybe get them on a payment plan successfully, you know, right away opening the file, I might go that way too, but generally I start by highest balance. So what I do first is send a letter that I send standard USPS mail, and one that's certified as well, because sometimes people don't like to pick up the certified mailing letter. But I like to get that because it has their signature on it saying, yes, I've received this letter. I'm aware that an attorney's office is involved now to try and collect this balance. But that letter gives the property owners another opportunity to please come to the table and discuss this issue. And it usually, the letters will say, you know, you have 14 days to either establish a payment plan or to pay the balance in full. So it is a little bit, that letter isn't as soft maybe as the first letter that Kelly sends, but by this point, like she said, there's been a good amount of time that these people haven't paid their taxes and have been receiving letters advising that they really need to, you know, address this issue. So sometimes those letters are just enough to get people to contact me and we can discuss a payment plan, which is effective. It's an option that the property owners have that we can stretch over 3 years, the balance of the tax title, but unfortunately there's no way to stop that interest, that 16% interest, that's statutory. That continues during a payment agreement, and I explain all that to the property owners. And although I'm not their attorney, my job is to try and collect the balance. So I also usually will recommend that they search for grant programs. And like Kelly said, there were some that during COVID, you could get up to $10,000 that would be applied toward their balance if they qualified, but you can only lead people so far. And if they don't apply for it, I can only suggest it and provide them the information. Not my background.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm getting, somebody is not mute and needs to be. Please mute.
Counselor Forgy, do you want to make me a co-host and I can kind of watch and mute people?
Okay, let's just see here. I'm coming. Danny, I'm sorry. It keeps disappearing on me. Hang on here just a moment.
I'm trying to mute that person, but their name is long, so it's hiding the little button from me.
Okay. All right. Whoever is out there is not muted and not participating in this. Would you please mute? All right.
Should I continue for now?
I think we're okay, and I do apologize.
Oh, not to worry. So after the demand letter, I usually would get a lot of responses, and people will either get on a payment plan or say, you know, I was embarrassed. I didn't want to respond to the town or the city. And I'm always compassionate with people, and you know, it's usually, if it's somebody that's in a hard spot and then they can't afford something essential, you know, taxes come last. And I always say, like, no judgment here. Let's just figure out how to get you back on track, which is the way that Kelly approaches everything too. So the goal is obviously not to take the house, and to help these people realize that maybe you can't afford the taxes on this house, because, you know, if you look at what your balance is and what a payment plan would look like, if that's not affordable, then maybe you need to look at some hard options, you know, financing, maybe if you have okay credit, you could, you know, go down that route, or maybe you have to sell it or get a roommate. I'm not sure, but I'm not their attorney, but I do tell them sometimes you have to look at options that, you know, are creative, because these taxes are due. And when I'm before the land court, what the land court says to property owners is, the city or the town is not a bank. They cannot shoulder the balance of the taxes. So this process that we go through, when I send the first letter, if I get a response, that's great, and we work with the property owners. If I don't get a response, I'll send another letter, and I'll say, we are going to file in the land court, and I usually will give them a couple weeks again. Sometimes I get responses from those letters, sometimes I don't. If I don't get any responses, or if a property owner contacts me at the beginning and then just kind of, you know, falls out of the picture, I do everything I can. Sometimes I call them, I can find their phone number online, and I'll try to reach out to them. Otherwise, if none of that works and we're at that point, I have to file in the land court. When it gets to the land court, the first thing they do is they file, they have somebody in the land court do a title exam. So they look at the property and they decide who has a legal interest in the property. After they do that, if there's no questions from the court, they'll send notice from the court to the people that have an interest in the property. That notice comes to those property owners with some information explaining, if there is a foreclosure, you are going to lose your equity in the property and the right to redeem, the right to get this lien taken off your property. So they have the right all the way through the land court process, all the way to the finish line, to redeem the property, to get that lien taken off. If a judgment enters in the land court, that right of redemption by law, by statute, is gone. That doesn't mean that they still can't pay the balance in full, but after a judgment enters, there's no opportunity for a payment plan. The balance can only be paid in full. So anyone who ignores the land court process, because sometimes people get notice from the land court and do not respond, they are not included in the case. The court assumes you are not interested in this property and or paying the balance to keep your equity. So the court moves on without you. That the notice that the court sends is by certified mail. If a person doesn't accept the certified mail and it gets sent back to the court, then we get notice of that, and I have to send a sheriff to the property to serve that notice. That's expensive and time consuming, all this is. But then we have to make sure anyone who has an interest gets notice that they could lose this property. If somebody gets that notice from the land court, they can answer the court. And when people contact me, usually if they haven't responded to anything, sometimes the first response will be like, oh wow, I just got this notice from the land court. What do I do? I say, I'm not your attorney, but I would suggest you file an answer if you plan to keep the property. An answer is basically just your name, address, contact information, so the court knows how to include you in the case. So if they answer, then we have hearings before the court. You have to have at least 2 before you get to the finish line. It's never just 2. The first hearing sets the amount that's owed before the court. That's called a finding. So we go to the court and we say, as of today, this is the balance, these are the legal fees, and person that has answered the court can either object to that amount, saying, oh, you know, I paid this bill and I don't think it's reflected on here, which usually we get those assertions before we get to the finding. Usually the finding just goes forward and everyone says, yeah, I owe that money. After we have that first hearing in the land court, the court usually gives the property owner 60 days to pay the balance in full. And the balance is the amount set before the court that date, plus interest and any other fees that accrue after that date. Sometimes property owners come to the court and they say, I am working to sell this property. I have a buyer, I need 90 days. And the court will usually give them the time that they need if they have maybe submitted a purchase and sale to me, or given something to show that they are working on remedying the issue. But the court is very deferential to property owners. Nobody wants to take anybody's property, and they want to give them the time they need to address the issue. After that first hearing, and after the time that the court gives them to pay their balance in full, like I said, it's usually 60 days, but it could be longer. Then if it's still not paid after that date, I can call another hearing to ask for a motion for judgment. The court will hear from me and the person who answered at that hearing, and the court will say, okay, well, we gave you 90 days and you haven't sold the property, you haven't provided a purchase and sale, or whatever the situation is. And the property owner could say, oh, well, I got sick and now I need another 90 days. And the court will say, well, maybe, we'll all figure it out together and see what's reasonable. They usually get more time after that. So it's usually several hearings on a motion for judgment before the court allows the motion for judgment. And it's after a while of either a property owner not getting financing they said they're going to get, or sometimes people just can't find a solution, but they try, and the court gives them time to do that. But before we get to that land court process, I do want to mention too that if a person enters a payment plan before we get to land court, it's a contract between the town or the city and the property owner, and that contract will say, if you make these payments that are adequate to address the balance in a timely manner, we agree not to move forward to file in the land court. So it's a contract saying, if you make these payments to address your balance, we're not going to move forward, and that that could work out great. And then if they get to the end of the payment plan, they pay all their balance, the town takes the lien off the property, and they're done. The city, I keep calling you guys a town, but the city removes themselves. But if they decide not to enter a payment plan until, oh boy, we're in land court, now what do? I do want to address the balance. Let's do a payment plan. We can still enter a payment plan with them. And in that payment plan, the wording's a bit different. And it says we will agree not to ask for final judgment on your property if you make the payments. So sometimes if we get to that place in the land court and a payment agreement starts, we take the case all the way up almost to the finish line, because sometimes those agreements fail and you don't want to be in a position where you have months and months or years ahead of you before you can get to the end if the payment agreement fails. And if a payment agreement does fail, the city of Greenfield will have me send them a letter, have the property owner receive a letter saying, you have breached this agreement and you need to remedy this agreement, or we will consider you not to be in a payment plan. Another opportunity to address the issue. And sometimes too, people will say, well, I need a lot of time, to address this balance. I just don't know what to do. And I'll say, enter a payment plan, and that'll give you time, make a couple of months of payments while you have it up for sale, because the more you pay, the less interest you're going to accrue. And the smaller the balance is, the better it is for you, because once it gets large, it's hard to address. But I think that the city of Greenfield is really methodical and treats everybody fairly, and everyone gets the same opportunities. And I think that it is a long process, and sometimes people have a hard time, including themselves in it. But that's not something that it's not something that I think Greenfield can really fix.
I add a couple things, but they're kind of questions. I just thought that I could help clarify as well.
Sure.
So I know I've talked to Kelly about this in the past, and I think she kind of touched on it. Iris may know too. What's the average time if somebody has to go through, if this full process plays out from start to finish and we actually take the property, what is the average time do you think that it takes to go through the whole process in Greenfield?
It's probably a little longer now, like post-COVID, because things have just slowed down.
Yeah.
Before, I would say maybe, you think, Iris, like 3 years probably before, like from start to finish. Now it's probably more like 5. It's definitely because the courts got so backed up and they're still trying to catch up from COVID. Things are still very, very slow.
And
So
then,
it's many, many years, before to go from start to finish if nothing, absolutely nothing is done.
right. And then I know this is probably outlined by law, but who sets the interest rate for the penalty interest?
It's the state. It's by statute.
Okay. And then if the house, so let's say it's a private house and it goes into this full process all the way to the end, where do the proceeds go?
It goes into well, if we end up selling it, and say if we sell it for profit, which doesn't always happen, it goes into the general fund, which is also dictated by state law. So
Yeah, I think there's a misunderstanding. I mean, I was asking that question to kind of clarify another misinterpretation of some of this by the public, which is confusing to them regarding the unrestricted account that's referred to as the mayor's unrestricted. It doesn't have anything to do with tax, nothing to do with tax title. It's CDBG program income. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yep.
And you answered my other question I had, which was what happens if somebody makes small payments? I think Iris answered that question already.
Yeah.
Thank you. Kelly, is there more that you want to add at this particular point, or would you welcome questions from the Ways and Means Committee?
Well, I'll kind of go take it to the finish line for where Iris left off. So, if we end up getting a judgment for a property, say somebody is still living in the property, we do have to go through an eviction process, which nobody enjoys, but we work very closely with the property owners. We have never had to throw anybody out of the house or actually evict anybody. We work with them to try and give them time and resources to find somewhere to go, should it ever get to that point. A lot of times these houses are abandoned and they're in disrepair and they're just, they were left to somebody and nobody wanted it kind of thing. But, if we do have to go to housing court, like I said, we try and work something out so that's mutually beneficial for the property owner who is now unfortunately losing their home and between the town, because it is a liability for us because they essentially become a tenant and we become their landlord. So anything that happens in that home while they're there and we own it becomes our expense. So if they get injured in the home or something happens to the home, like the pipes burst, like technically we are responsible for fixing those, which is why we try and get the person out of the property so that it protects the city of Greenfield from having to deal with those liability issues. And then once we get to the point where the house is vacant and we are going to auction it, it has to go out for a public auction. It can either be sealed bid or public auction or RFP process, but it has to be some sort of process where everybody has access to be able to bid on the property. Sometimes, like I said, sometimes we make money, sometimes we don't. It's 50-50. There's a lot of times where we have lost money. The most recent sale, we did make a good profit, but it's also a very good real estate market. It was a very unique property. Those are like 1 in a million things that rarely ever happen. But all that money goes back to the city to be able to pay for the, all the expenses, your trash pickup, your, police, your fire, that goes right back to help the city pay bills. And one of the reasons why we follow this process, and I try and be so consistent and so, I've been there for 10 years now. I follow certain timeframes within the year. Everybody's treated the same. Like Iris said, she treats everybody the same. We always try and be very helpful. We try and point people in the right direction because we don't want anybody to end up in this situation. That's not our goal. But we want you to pay your taxes. If you're a property owner, that's part of owning a home, is paying your taxes. And it's not fair to your neighbor for you to not pay your taxes and they are. It's everybody's burden. It's, what helps pay for all of our town services. So that's why we follow these rules and we follow this process to make sure that everybody does pay so that the town can afford to pay for all the services that we do offer our citizens.
Okay, so I'm going to open it up to counselors, but I have a quick question first, if you don't mind. In regard to paying your taxes, what does the town require? Is it cash? Is it check? Is it credit card?
Any of the above.
Tell us any of the
We
above.
take anything. We do not take trades, but we do take any form of payment.
Okay, and the check has to be made out to the city of Greenfield.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, counselors, what questions do you have? And I can't see all of you, so I can see Mike. So go ahead, Mike.
All right, I have a couple. So do, I know that it was mentioned that at a certain point by the attorney that the letters are certified. Are the letters we send in the earlier stages certified letters?
They're not, because again, they're not required. It's a courtesy thing. And if we
Yep.
get them back, like usually if we send it to somebody and it doesn't come back, like it comes back with that little yellow sticker on it, like they didn't know,
Right.
we'll try and research and find out where the person is gone, or whoever the new owner may be. But again, it's a courtesy to them,
Sure.
just, it's not something that we have to do, but we try and just reach out a little bit more than is necessary.
Okay. And as far as I know, it's pretty much like partial payments or payment plan is kind of allowed. Are there different degrees to that? Because I know Iris was stating that like after a certain point in the land court, like you got to pay in full or bust, right?
Yeah. The only point you ever have to pay in full is after we foreclosed. So if you've
Right.
ignored the process the whole way, you no longer have that option. But up until we get that judgment, you always have the option to make payments.
Right. And so I saw in the documentation you had sent and it was reiterated again that you try to max it out at like 3 years as like a reasonable thing because they don't keep swimming or sinking rather.
Yeah.
But if it's, let's just say it's early on in the process, I don't know, I guess we could throw out numbers if we want to, but if somebody owed like $5,000, and they're trying to pay partial payments, what is there a timeline set up for that? Or is it up until a certain point? Is it like, look, if you're paying something, that's great. Or does it start with trying to branch it out? Because obviously while they're paying off existing owed taxes, there's still new taxes that
Mhm.
are there as well. So you're not only having to pay the current ones, but on the back taxes.
Yep.
Does it like a payment schedule start? If I were behind and I decided to call in and say, look, I want to make some payments on it, what does that kind of look like for somebody? Do you immediately try to expand it across 3 years? Is it like a case by case? Like, what
It's
do you look
up to you. Like say, if you wanted to pay $2,000 up front and pay the rest over the course of 1 year, you could do that. If you wanted to make a couple big payments and then pay over the course of 2 years, like that, we try and work with you for whatever might, be best for your financial situation. Some people just come in and make a few big lump sum payments to pay it off, and that's it. They don't actually do monthly payments.
Okay.
Or some people may make an agreement to pay the old taxes on a payment arrangement and then agree to just pay their currents as normal. So it's not like you have to do 3 years, the same amount of payment, every month, like, we'll
Right.
kind of structure it to work with you, but we try not to stretch it out too long. Cause like I said, it doesn't usually behoove the taxpayer to keep stretching it out further and further and further, because it just gets you in a bigger hole. Because typically taxes do
Right.
go up every year and the interest, is going to keep accruing. So.
Right. The reason I was kind of mentioning that was for the idea of like when the like credit cards, like minimum payments, and those rules got changed so that you had, I forget what they are now, but you had to your minimum couldn't just be there so that you're constantly sinking and sinking and sinking. You had to get like an extra 1% over what the minimum would be. So you were constantly paying, your minimum payment was going to pay something on the principal.
Mm.
So I didn't know if there was something, I don't know if I want to call it like a safety net, but some sort of minimum to what a minimum payment could be when that's kind of.
It all depends on what you owe too. Like if you
Right.
owe $500, like, your payments every month are going to be small, but it depends on the situation. Like I said, we try and stretch it out so that at the end of, if you do a 3-year payment plan, at the end of that plan, you are paid up to current, then you just have to worry about going forward, paying your current tax bills, and that's it. And we've had many people that have done it, and like, it looks like a very like proud moment for me when they get to the end of their payment plan and they, they're current and they're moving forward and they've got themselves back on track. And, it's good to see people who come out of the hole that they've dug themselves in and are now better for it. And, they've made a lot of progress and now they have the money to put back into their home. And, it's a good thing. Like I said, if you just work with us, like, we're more than happy to help people out all the time. So.
And if I could ask one more,
Sure.
So I don't know if I'm gonna be able to describe this well. So if someone's in arrears and they set up a plan, and they're paying money on it, and let's say with current taxes and their payment plan, hypothetically, it was like $800.
Mm.
But that month they only paid $600. Does that go first to the back taxes or to the current taxes?
It always goes to the oldest first.
Oldest
Unless
first.
your agreement says that you're paying only on the old taxes and you're going to pay current separate, if it's structured that way. But if you just generally have an $800 a month payment plan, it's going to go to the oldest balance first.
Right, but that's what I mean is, okay, that's what I mean. I guess it wouldn't be worded well. Like, so if somebody were to, obviously, let's say their payment plan was for $500 a month and their current taxes that they got for the year are, $400 a month. And they didn't have $1,200 and they paid the $800 towards that. Would now the $400 that they're starting to accrue new back taxes that are more current, would now all of a sudden, if it got to a certain point, would that be starting a new process over again where they would be, 14 days behind or you know what I mean? Like if they didn't pay the current year's taxes by the May 1st deadline, would they start getting notices?
So what happens with tax title? So if you say you didn't pay your 2020 taxes and you got on a payment arrangement, so you're going to keep paying the oldest balance first, but every year that new year is going to be added to your tax title. It doesn't become a separate process or anything. It just gets added to the balance. So it doesn't start a new lien or a new, a petition or anything like that. It just keeps, the balance just keeps rolling over and you just keep paying on it until you get to the end.
But so that's why I was saying, like, because I know that if certain things get like, you think you're doing one thing and then all of a sudden you get notices that you're not doing something.
You're still going to get a demand every year, regardless. Like, so at the end of the year, we have to issue a demand after May 1st if you haven't paid the bill. But just if you're already on a payment plan and you're in tax title, nothing else is going to happen. All it's doing is just telling you still owe that money because we have to send a demand by law.
And the interest is only going to accrue on the older balances, not on the new one until it's after that year's closing. Is that correct?
Well, your interest accrues after the due date. So you have 4 bills a year. So if you don't pay your August 1st bill, August 2nd, you're going to start accruing interest of 14%. Same thing with your November 1st bill. If you don't pay it by November 1st, it accrues at 14%. So each quarter, if you don't hit those due dates, you're going to start accruing interest on that prior quarter's bills.
But you said after the years closes, it goes up to 16.
So once it goes into tax title, it goes to 16%.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
if it's still, your current year is usually, it's going to be at 14%, but all those other prior years, at the end of the year, it gets subsequented over into tax title if you're still in tax title. It doesn't start a new process, if that makes sense. And
so you could literally be carrying one part of the balance that's getting 16 and one that's 14 until a certain point. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Toronto. Are there other councilors that wish to speak at this time? Any questions for Iris, Kelly, or Danny in regard to this? Okay, so
I do. Oh, you want to go first, Chris?
No, go right ahead. That's perfectly fine. I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
No, that's fine. I didn't raise my hand.
Okay. Go right ahead, please.
Sure. I'm just going to think for a moment. So the first thing I just want to say is it's really, really clear to me that both of you don't want to take people's houses. That's very clear, and that you're working really hard to have a diligent process that that follows a state law and that is as fair as possible. And I hear you both working really hard on that. Few questions. One, I'm wondering how many houses per year for, like, I would love to see data on how many houses per year for the past 10-ish years we've taken the title, that Greenfield has taken the title on. Like, how many houses, how many people has this, have we taken the titles on? Do we have that data?
5 years, I have it for the last 5 years. We've taken title to 14 properties, not necessarily homes. Some of those might be pieces of land. I don't have the exact property descriptions in front of me, but I know some of them are pieces of land. I'd probably say 2/3 of them are land. We don't get that many houses.
Are there businesses in there too? Commercial properties?
No, I don't. I can't recall that we've ever foreclosed on a business. So
yeah, okay.
Okay, and I'm working to like find the, I don't know if it's a Venn diagram or how what you're sharing tonight integrates with the 10 recommendations that the public has brought to us. And I think I would need to sit down to see that, but it doesn't actually, my initial impression is that the two might be able to, a lot of things could coexist. I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, but there's,
I know which recommendations you're talking about. A lot of them we already do. There are some things that were in those recommendations that are not allowed by law, such as like putting language on the tax bills, I think was one of the suggestions. You can't change the language that's on the tax bills. It's dictated by Mass General Law. There are some things, the mayor and I have discussed that we can post on the website. We're more than happy to do that because we are getting a new website very soon. So, we can certainly add some information on the process to the website. I'm trying to think of what the other recommendations were. I think one of them was going to taking these cases to court, which we're not ever going to do. No town does that. You gotta realize that these people are not paying their taxes, not land court, but I think somebody had suggested taking it to Superior Court or something like that. If you get a judgment against these people in Superior Court who are already not paying their taxes, they're not going to pay the judgment. And it's also very time consuming, very expensive. The process through land court is what every city and town follows in Massachusetts. And it also, at the end, if we don't end up getting our money, at least we get an asset that we can try and make the city whole with. And as far as the whole home equity theft thing, that's not something the city can decide. That's a state law. That's something that you guys, if you chose to, would have to contact your representatives or your senators to get them to change the law. We cannot give the money back to the taxpayer because that's the city acting like a realtor. And what incentive does the homeowner have if we're going to sell your property and give you your money back? You could have done that, and then it opens up a whole can of worms for, you didn't sell my property for the amount of money it should have been sold for. What if there were liens that when the city forecloses on a property, there are liens and mortgages get extinguished by the city that also may need to be made whole if we sold a property and made money. There's just a lot of things that would come up if, the council were to try and force us to give money back. And again, we've already checked with the DOR. It's actually not legal for us to give money back to the former taxpayer. So
if I could just add one thing as well. I mean, when I speak to a lot of property owners and I explain, you're going to lose your equity in this property. If you can get financing, you'll likely get a lower interest rate. Or if you want to sell it, that is how you recoup your equity. Otherwise, you're going to lose it. And it's really, I always tell people it inspires them to get this balance paid so they don't lose their property and the equity that they have in it. And I believe that is the intent of the statute written that way, so that people do have something on the line, so that they do address the issue to pay their taxes.
Councilor Golub, does that
Yeah.
help? And do you have any more follow-up?
I do have, I'm trying to process this. I'll say that this is all new language to me. I have never owned a house. And so this is all, and it doesn't seem ethical to me that a city would take equity in a house. And so I'm trying to figure out, I'm processing out loud with you all. So a couple of things I'm hearing. Of the 10 recommendations, you said that there are some that we already do. It would be wonderful. I would love to hear specific, like I
had written
those are.
Iris
You
and
ran
I
that?
both wrote responses to them.
Okay.
Mira had sent them to us. So I can send them to Tammy and she can give them to you guys.
Sure.
Because we did respond to all of those suggestions.
Okay, that would be great. What we're already doing, and also the ones you said, these are easy for us to do and we'd be happy to do those. That
Yep.
would help, that would help me digest. And after that, I might have some more thoughts, but I don't know more questions, but I don't know what they are right now. So thank you for doing that. That'll be very helpful.
Anytime, like if any of you guys ever have questions, you can always call my office. Like I'm more than happy to answer questions about anything or stop in or whatever you want. Me or Iris we're always available.
Thank you. Okay, but is that something that you can send to that just like which ones we already do and which ones are just easy to implement and we can do right away?
Yeah.
That would be great if all the counselors could see that too.
Yep.
Thank you for taking the time to do that.
Are you all set, Counselor?
I am.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. So Counselor Healy, we haven't heard from you this evening. Do you have any questions? Okay. Okay. I'm not hearing back from him. He may be away for a moment or two.
It looks
Counselor
like we
Healy.
did add recommendation 1 to the website. Must have been sometime in the last year when we started talking about this, just so you know. I just looked.
Yeah.
I was gonna send it to Caitlin for the new website, but I looked first just now.
Thank you. Counselor Healy. Any questions? Okay. What is the will of Ways and Means at this particular point? It seems like we have at this particular time talked about getting some more information to counselors about this matter. If that is the case and people are feeling comfortable about it, we can move on to our other business this evening and revisit this again in October at our regular meeting for discussion and recommendations. How does everyone on the council committee feel about that? Is that fair? Councillor Healy, did you have any questions?
I don't.
Okay, thank you. All right, how does everybody want to proceed with this? Do you want to, is everybody okay? Let's put it this way. Is everybody okay with moving this out back to an agenda discussion item in October? Do people want to vote or make recommendations this evening? Okay, I'm not seeing anything.
I guess I'd be confused as to what we'd be voting on.
Okay, so this has come before our committee, and the request is actually, it's a good question, because in reality, this is not an area for the Finance Ways and Means Committee for the City of Greenfield to take up. Basically, we took it up at the request of the council president, which is valid. It has actually been a discussion with Al Norman and other folks from the community that are bringing this forward. They, I know, have had a meeting with the mayor. I know that they have been speaking to Kelly, and Kelly has been answering questions as well. The issue to me at this particular point seems to be that there is no process for the council to take this up. Rather, there is a number of things that we have heard tonight that will be implemented or have already been implemented. And there is a significant focus on the state at this level and what the state law says we can and cannot do. And also with the group that is concerned about the equity issue, lobbying the state for some consideration. I believe the council's role in this is to be able to make a resolution that would be in support of tax reform and tax title and equity reform. That is how I see the role of the council going forward on this. I think that some of the things that have been suggested and discussed at this point are valid. Personally, my opinion is I am not really interested in changing any home rule issues or addressing this particular issue through home rule. But I do believe that there is a need for reform, and I think it would be in the best interests of our council to support the work that's being done by sending a letter of support for tax reform or resolution for support in tax reform that could be placed on our next council agenda, and that could be sent to the state, and we can work with the mayor and with the folks that have brought this issue forward in the community. So thank you for your question. That's my assessment of it at this point. That's also my opinion. So if there are other opinions out there, and we certainly have heard different opinions, please take that into consideration as you consider how we should move forward.
Gotcha.
Okay, is there anybody else who has any thoughts of how we should deal with this?
I have a question. I'm gonna
Yes, please.
think
Go
out
right ahead.
loud. So if one thing that we would like to have a motion on is having that resolution to the state come out, how does that happen? Can that come out of Ways and Means? What might be the next steps for
Yes,
moving that through?
yes. We can this evening make a motion to support tax title reform based on all the evidence that we have heard. And we can make a motion for a positive recommendation to go out to council. Can go out, I'm trying to think what the agenda has on it. I'm sorry to say, I'm coming up blank here, but we can go ahead and make a recommendation this evening based on what's on our agenda, how we'd like to deal with this issue. And we can make a positive recommendation when they ask for a report from council on council floor tomorrow. I mean, from Ways and Means on council floor tomorrow, we can go ahead and say that we made this motion to do a resolution. And we could report on that, but that's going to have to go back out, I believe, and back out onto a chair's agenda.
Right, Chris, I guess my question would be, what, other than blanketly recommending or making a resolution that we believe that there could be reform to the process, there doesn't seem to be any real specifics that I would be recommending. I mean, the idea of reforming something is one thing, but having, I guess, we, like was asked, we should probably get, clear answers to some of the recommendations that were put forward by the public and what, as what was talked about, what's already implemented, what cannot be implemented by statute, and what might be able to be implemented now that, you know, they're suggested within, you know, reason and within the law. And other than it, I don't know, I just kind of feel like other than it being really drawn out, like we are putting a resolution that this portion of the law should be changed. I don't really, I guess I'm just unclear on what it would be that we would be drawing up a resolution or a recommendation for the rest of the council to send off to the state. Other than just, like I said, other than just the idea of the form is needed.
I thought this whole discussion was supposed to be about the whole home equity theft thing. And I thought that was the whole reason that we were even talking about this, was because some people wanted change in that regard to the law when it comes to tax title.
Right.
Most of the recommendations that were made were nothing to do with how the process actually works. It was more about notification and just, you know, explanation of, you know, how everything works to the public. You know, and payment plans and things that, you know, like I said, that we've already have been doing. Again, if the council wants to make a recommendation, I think, and you know, specifically how they want to change the process when the city actually sells a property, and how much money the city keeps versus, you know, whether a property owner or former property owner keeps it. I mean, I thought that was the whole point of the discussion this evening.
Well,
But again, it's all a state thing, so it's not, you know, it's nothing that can be changed at council level.
So the fact that we're even having the discussion of where this fits, where this all fits, it tells me, it informs me. Is there some echo or something that's going on here? I'm not quite sure. Okay, it informs me that there isn't a place for the council to act on anything at this particular point. If a counselor wants to go ahead and bring language forward and sponsor this language, that would be a one way of doing it. This was given to us basically to vent the issue. But bottom line for me at this particular level is that there is nothing the council can do. This is an administrative side issue. This is something we talked about last night at the CRE meeting with Councilor Ricketts. It's who gets to do what, and this is something that we cannot, I believe we do not have a role in at this particular time.
Oh, is that you, Chris?
That is me, and I am sorry.
That's
So
okay.
let me
I thought
just-
it was the other person.
It's
I was
going to
gonna
ring
say,
through.
one of the recommendations, I know it's hard to figure out next steps for council, especially depending on the purview of your committee. But you know, things that sitting government can do is recommendation 10 from the group was actually to advocate for House Bill 3053. And I don't know, you know, I'm not saying to do it or not. I'm just pointing out that that is something that a city council could do as a group, or individuals could do individually, is advocacy to our delegation and upwards on that specific bill. Or you could look at it and decide which pieces of it people like. Because as Kelly and Iris explained, I think that Greenfield is a bit of a model for being able to work, you know, being fair and working within the confines of the state law within reason already, you know, in many ways, and aside from a few little notification things. But it sounds like if other communities did as much as we do, and many of them probably do, but as much as we do in terms of the grace and notification and time that we spend trying to get people on payment plans and giving them opportunity and trying, you know, contacting them. And Greenfield is a small town, you know, you get a letter back, we just Google, you know, somebody who knows somebody, we figure out, we do a good job of trying to find people, right, Kelly? So I would say that recommendation 10 would be the one that if anybody was interested in actually making that, you would do advocacy to the delegation.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. How does any thoughts from the committee, from Ways and Means?
Madam Chair, can you recognize me? You have the discretion.
Yeah, I know, but I am not going to. Thank you, Mr. Norman.
I know that I would like more time. I'd like to see the list back and just have a moment to digest. And I imagine if I, on this committee that's been part of these conversations, wants a little bit more time to digest and think about it, I imagine that getting something, this would come tomorrow night, right? I think that coming tomorrow night wouldn't give people enough time to think about it. So yeah, I would also, and I'm looking at recommendation 10 and seeing a lot there, and wanting to make sure that we have a moment to make sure that we're, you know, having it as a if we're voting on something that it's succinct and helpful and moving things forward. So I would appreciate a little bit more time.
Okay, so if the will of the committee is that we move this on to our next agenda, I would be willing to do that, and that would give people time to revisit, and that would be appropriate for if you have questions specifically. I'm going to say any of the questions that have come forward from the citizens group. If you want to reach out and do your research and everything else, that would be fine. Does the committee agree? Do you want to vote on doing that we will just extend this into our October meeting? Doesn't have to be a formal vote. It can be that we're all in agreement. That would be fine.
I agree.
Are there any objections at all? Okay, so that's what we'll do. We'll push this on to our October Ways and Means meeting at this point. I want to thank all the parties who are here this evening to talk to us about the whole issue of tax title and equity in tax title taking. I think there'll be a rather large discussion, especially in the community at this point, about this, and we will revisit it again on our October agenda. So thank you all for participating this evening. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you, Treasurer Varner and Iris, our attorney. Thank you very much for being here, our tax title attorney. We appreciate the information you shared with us. I do also see other people from the community here. I know that we have spoken before, and we will be speaking with you again. Thank you very much. We're going to move on.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. All right. We have some motions that we really need to take care of tonight for tomorrow night's business. So our first motion is to take from the table, and this is the motion right now, that the Greenfield Ways and Means Committee take from the table order number fiscal year 22-155, $175,000 be appropriated from Fund 8400 General Stabilization to fund an independent assessment and audit of the City of Greenfield's Police Department structure, policies, and practices. Areas to be covered include, but are not limited to the following: organizational structure and governance, operating policies and procedures, department culture, hiring and promotional practices, professional standards and accountability, budgeting and planning, which was tabled at the August 16th, 2022 Ways and Means Committee. Is someone willing to make that motion?
I'd make that motion.
I have a motion on the table right now. Is there a second to that motion?
Second, Councilor Healy.
Okay. Is there discussion about this motion at this particular point?
I think we kind of hashed it out before with the full council in regard and the response from the mayor with the intentions of I guess So we've taken from the table, so I guess right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, we were gonna lower this to 100,000.
That is
So I
correct.
guess,
Your
that
recollection
would
is
be-
correct.
would I be, would that amendment motion come tomorrow night, or would that be now and then that would be our recommendation for tomorrow? I'm not really, I guess that's the gray area, I'm not sure.
I know Liz is here. Liz, my feeling is that it can be amended at this level as a recommendation going out to council floor.
And so tomorrow, would that reading of it be with the amendment?
We'd have to have a motion right now during our discussion. There would have to be a motion to amend the amount to $100,000. That was the first piece. The second is, so we have this motion right now. We would need an amendment to reduce the amount of this motion. And that would be our recommendation to amend this motion to $100,000. And that would have
We
to
would
be
have to
another
then
amendment.
amend it tomorrow night as well, correct?
Yes.
Yes, we would. Okay. So right now we have a motion, we have a second, and we're having discussion. So does somebody want to make a motion to amend?
Yes, I would
Okay.
move to amend the amount from 175,000 to 100,000.
Is there a second to that amendment?
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion on that amendment to reduce? The recollection is correct. That was the amount that the mayor was suggesting. Okay. We are voting now on the amendment to reduce the amount from 175 to $100,000.
Can I just ask a question there? If
Yes,
we
thank you.
vote-
Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. If we vote to amend, we don't need to vote to pass the amended motion, correct? That's a separate vote, correct?
Correct.
That is the
Okay.
separate vote, correct?
Okay.
Okay, so all in favor of the amendment to amend this amount from 175 to $100,000, please indicate by saying aye, raising your hand.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye. Okay, any opposed? Okay, any abstentions? All right, so now we go back to the original motion on the table, which is 175. It has been amended. Liz, do we need to vote? I believe we need to vote this down in order to have the amendment go forward. Does that make sense to everybody?
Well,
Nope.
no, you would just remove it from the table and vote to amend it, recommend that you, to council to amend it down. That's your vote.
Okay, okay, thank
That's right.
you. Okay, so we do have an amended vote as a recommendation of $100,000 that will come through council, and the other piece will be the other piece, because it has amended this motion, it's done. So we will bring forward the recommendation of it as $100,000 to council floor tomorrow evening for a vote of the council. That
you
makes
have-
sense?
So can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Are you
Sure.
going to forward a positive or negative recommendation, or are you doing neither and you're just going to forward the amended amount? Are you guys going to discuss the actual
Right.
motion?
Okay, well, thank you. My parliamentary procedure is not where it should be.
Okay, I was just,
So,
yeah, it's
so
okay.
perhaps what we should do is we should go
It's-
back to the original motion and vote it up or down or whatever it is.
Yeah, so the way I understand it is you've amended the amount, but and so that's a motion, the amendment to the motion, but the structure of the motion remains the same. So you can
Okay.
discuss it, you can discuss the merits of it in this committee, and then you forward whatever recommendation it is to the council either way.
Okay,
We'd essentially be giving a negative recommendation on this and our rationale behind the negative recommendations that we want to amend it down to 100,000.
That's
Does
correct.
that make sense?
Yes, we still have that on the table at this
Well, that
point.
depends. I mean, if you want to, I don't understand why there'd be a negative recommendation at this point if you're just amending. Oh, I see.
Or
Never
no recommendation with a neutral recommendation with,
Well, we can also, this was taken from the table
right,
as well for discussion, and then it was amended.
right.
Right.
So
We're giving a positive
we need to-
amended recommendation.
No, I think
have-
you can still discuss the merits of the actual motion, dollar amount notwithstanding. So you talk about whether or not you want it $100,000 to be positively recommended as well. All that rationale would be coming through from the committee.
Yeah, that's.
I'm a little
That's
bit
what we're doing.
confused. I'm terribly sorry. Sheila or Penny, can you help me out here?
Yeah.
Is Sheila on?
Sheila's not here.
Okay, Penny, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Penny, can you help us, please?
So you just want to put it forward. You want to put that original amount for 175. So you're going to say that you are putting that forward with a negative recommendation.
Okay,
And then when you give the rationale at the full committee,
Right,
then then one of you will make the amendment.
right.
okay, okay. All right. I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Ricketts. So we still have the motion for the 175 on the table. We did take a vote to amend it down to $100,000, but we still have to dispose of this motion of 175. So is there any more discussion on that? I think we've all been through the justification of what the mayor wants to do with the independent audit. It has been out there for a couple of months. Are you ready to vote?
So
That is
are we voting? Thanks for your patience with me. Are we?
No, that's okay.
I'd rather spend less money than more money, which is why I voted for the 100. But I
Right.
will not be voting for the audit, and I'd be happy to share that today or tomorrow. My rationale why. But I don't want my vote to amend it to appear to be a positive vote for $100,000. And I'm fine with whatever process, as long as that's clear.
Okay, so I apologize for
No,
really
I'm not,
getting
I'm
this
glad I'm not facilitating.
screwed up. So here's what we do. We will vote the motion, either up or down, and we've already taken a vote to recommend that out to council that it will be $100,000 figure. When that comes up, we will say, depending on how the vote happens, we will say the 175 failed, the 175 passed, or the amendment to the 175 was voted. And then the council, we did this a little bit backwards, I'm sorry. What we really need to do now to move this along, in my opinion, is we need to vote the 175 down. I'm not telling anybody how to vote. I'm just saying we have to dispose of this motion. It has to come off, and it's the full council that needs to make the decision. We need to get it off our table and out to council. That's our job. And then our recommendation informs council on how they want to vote.
I mean, normally we don't really vote on the motions at subcommittee in this way.
We vote on, right, we vote on a recommendation, so.
Right, so we're
Yeah.
just really voting to take this from our own subcommittee table and bring it to full council. Is that pretty much what we'd be voting on? And then the
Yes,
meat and potatoes of it would be what we explain our recommendation to be, and then the council would actually vote on it, right? Full council?
Okay, so we're voting to take it from our table and bring it to council.
Right.
Okay? Does everybody understand we have a motion to take from the table? We've had discussion over this. We need a vote to take this from the table and bring it out to council.
So moved.
Okay. All in favor of doing this? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed or abstentions? Okay. We've already discussed in committee that our recommendation, and I will say this on council floor, is that it be reduced to $100,000. Councilors can then take up, the other recommendation is that we took it off the table, we're bringing it out to council, and we are recommending a reduced amount. And that will be what we'll say tomorrow evening, and then every councilor can vote whichever way they want. I hope that is clear and I hope it's legal. So thank you. We also have to make a recommendation out to council on the approval to repurpose $57,955.54 of previously authorized financial orders for parts and repairs of the transfer station doors. Is there any discussion on that particular piece? Is there anybody who wants to make a recommendation on how we deal with that?
I'll make a recommendation that we move it on with a positive recommendation to council.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second to that?
Yep.
Okay. Any discussion? The paperwork attached to your agenda was actually showing that there were going to be the repurposing of money came from 3 different areas, and it was going to a like project for the transfer station doors. I believe that's basic housekeeping. Okay, all in favor of making a positive recommendation? So
Aye.
indicate, please. Aye. Okay, thank you. We have the next item on the agenda, which is appropriate $45,000 to general stabilization, from general stabilization, for establishment expenses of a public safety community task force. At this particular time, Councillor Bullock, who prepared this and presented this to council, has removed her. We all got an email that said that she is removing the project for the near future, and she has asked that she be allowed to bring it back at another time, but she is pulling this. So this is not valid anymore. So I don't think it needs any kind of decision from us. Go ahead, Liz.
Sorry. I just, if you want to bring it back, I wouldn't, I would just table it because she won't be able to bring it back for 9. I don't know the time frame that Councillor Bullock was thinking. Maybe it's longer than 9 months. So that would just be my recommendation.
Okay. So at this,
Was there,
Yep.
sorry, was there a reason that there was no order number attached to this? It just says financial order on it? Usually there's a,
Yeah.
a number on it.
I-
There's
That's
Hang on
that's
just a
usually
second.
assigned the number, so I don't know, maybe they missed it.
let me just see here. I cannot answer that question. But I will take Liz's advice. I do think it's appropriate that we table it. And then Mary Ann can bring it back. Council
Right.
Bullock can bring it back whenever she wants to. So at this particular point, is there a motion to table the $45,000?
I'll
Sure.
make the motion or second it.
Okay, a second.
I'd second that.
Okay, all in favor to table? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion, that is tabled. Thank you, Liz, for that.
Yeah.
The next 2 things on our agenda, we did have quite a big discussion at our first Ways and Means meeting this month. And the consensus of the group at that particular time is that they needed more time to look into this particular piece, and they really needed Liz to speak to folks about this. And so for the next two pieces of this, I'm going to ask that we table. Can I have a motion to table rescinding the borrowing of $500,000 for the construction of the new library? That is the first tabling motion I'm looking for.
Why are we exactly tabling it?
Because at our Ways and Means meeting that we had a couple of weeks ago, people said that they needed more time to get more details at that particular point on the borrowing, that it wasn't made clear. Liz wasn't able to attend our meeting, and some members felt that they wanted to have that extra information. So it was discussed that we could actually have that discussion and have something ready for the October meeting.
Okay, well, I just want to say, I did get a bunch of information. I don't know if you guys read through it yet from Liz today.
Yep.
And I read through it and I'm more comfortable now. So
I'm a
that's
lot more
just my
comfortable.
opinion. I do know that Counselor Disorder, wasn't comfortable and she's not here. So in good faith, I'm going to just table this one. I'll make a motion to table until she can join us.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion to table. I need a second.
Second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion to table the rescinding of the borrowing authorization for $500,000. All in favor of tabling that motion?
I guess, can we have discussion on that?
Oh, yeah, what? Yes, please.
I guess,
I'm sorry.
I guess if we're not going, I mean, Liz is here, and if we're not going to, if not during the subcommittee, when are we going to get any other answers? I guess would be my
The
question.
next subcommittee meeting. It's tabled till the next subcommittee meeting.
But
Correct.
I mean, I'm just wondering, because we're here right now. Like, could we ask the questions right now?
I'm just doing it out of courtesy for a counselor who's not here that had a lot of questions on it. That's all.
Oh.
If you wish,
Gotcha.
if you wish, you can put, we have a motion to table this. If there is no second to this motion, or if you are not in agreement with the motion, you can exercise those things as well.
Right. I guess I was just considering the timeline of the contract with the fire department.
Yeah, they don't need the $500,000 to sign the contract, though. They have enough money to sign the contract.
All right.
This, if you remember, this was for FF&E, which,
Right.
don't ask me what it stands for, but I do know it's all the stuff that goes into the building. So.
All right. Well,
Furnishing, fixtures, and
Equipment.
equipment.
Okay, thank you.
all right. Well, I'm not going to get in the way.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion to table this for 1 month. Let's put a time frame on it. We'll make a motion to table for 1 month. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Catherine, was that you?
Yes, I'll
Okay,
second it.
thank you. All right. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor of tabling this motion, please indicate aye. Raise your hands.
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Abstentions?
I'll abstain from that.
Okay, thank you. All right, we do go on to the second, the next motion, which is the second part of this borrowing piece, as we have come to understand. So I am also going to ask accordingly, I'm going to ask, based on what was discussed at our first Ways and Means meeting this month, if there does anybody want to make a motion to table this for 1 month?
I'll make a motion to table this till the next meeting, 1 month.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay. Okay.
I guess
Do you
question.
want- Do you want to, sure, if you have any questions or anything
I
else,
did
go
have-
right ahead.
I have a question in regards to the information Liz sent us earlier today. So if the idea behind this still being a borrowing instead of, you'd mentioned something in there like we couldn't have used at the time free cash that wasn't certified. Is
Correct.
that right? Because it wasn't at the time certified.
Correct, because I had a
Now-
August 29th deadline.
Right. So now that it has been certified,
I can't
Can
change
we-
the source.
can't change this. Could it be a different financial order put in?
Yeah, but now it's not gonna hit the September 24th deadline we have for the bids.
But we don't, is it correct when I just heard we don't need the 500,000 to complete that contract?
Oh, I thought you were speaking of the, I'm sorry. It will be okay. What the fire station the building committee will have to do is they're gonna have to reduce, as Counselor Forgy said, the FF&E.
Yep.
In order to sign the contract.
And then
So
they
they'll
can,
vote to do that, and then hopefully we, pass the other funding. Because the FF&E is not the bid that we're responding to on
right,
September 24th. It's the construction bid,
right,
and that's the most critical thing, is that we need to get that underway.
of course. So it would be put back, it could be put back up in a order that instead of this 500,000, they'd have to re-ask for the FF&E. Is that kind of the idea?
Oh, I see what you're saying. I'm sorry. I understand what you're saying now. The recommendation was put forward as that because there's, the free cash is better served in the capital stabilization. And we can discuss, again, when Counselor DeSorger's back. But especially considering the fact that the bond premium will offset the borrowing.
Right.
Because every time we bond, we send it out to bid. And the bidders, I'm just gonna say, like, they sweeten the pot by saying, I'll give you this rate and I'll give you this much in premium. That's kind of how it goes. And then the law states that you have to use the premium to either offset the debt or for the building project.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is we'll vote to offset the debt, and the amount we get will offset this. And that's why I'm recommending the borrowing, because we have so many other capital projects that free cash is needed for.
Gotcha. And so essentially we would end up borrowing it down the road for a different project. Is that kind of the idea, like, anyway?
No, this will be for the fire station.
No, I mean, but if we were to, if let's say we were to want to use free cash for this, you're saying that there's enough things out there that would be wanting that need anyway, that we may end up borrowing. down the line.
I'd rather not borrow for these smaller items. That's the purpose.
Right, okay, gotcha.
So it makes sense, especially since this large bonding will generate a lot of premium.
Mhm.
In terms of trying to accomplish all the capital improvements that need to be done. And believe me, we aren't going to be able to fund everything on the list. And we haven't even started beginning to add to list. That'll be soon. So it just makes sense. You know, I've always, people have an importance to borrowing that I don't understand as much, because when I like to use a roof as an example, as deferred maintenance, we all know that if you don't do your roof and you put it off, okay, now maybe you have to do 2 layers on your roof. And then you put it off and maybe I got to replace some beams because I didn't do it. And then not only is the project now more costly, materials and labor have gone up.
Right.
So my point is that we're better served addressing all these other items with the free cash versus this particular one, because the debt service will generate premium to pay it off. Is that, I don't know. And so then I use the free cash to address all the other smaller ones.
Right. Right.
And does anybody have any questions on the information I sent? Because I'd be more than happy, or do you want to wait?
I haven't had a chance to read it.
Okay.
And so I appreciate the extra time to sit with it and digest it.
Okay.
I'm wondering if in that there was the list, you say we have the list of all the projects that we need the free cash for. Do we have, like,
yes,
that's helpful information.
So in the
me.
budget book,
Yeah.
if you happen to have it, and there's a link to it on the website. If you don't, I'll try and find it. It's all in there of what is lined up for FY24. When we did last year, we do a 5-year. So things that weren't done in 23 got pushed to 24. And so you'll see that on there. There's a lot in 24.
Okay.
And I haven't asked for new ones yet.
Okay.
So all I'm saying is there's a lot. And so my theory, the way I look at things is, yes, we're looking at the fire station, but I got to look at overall all the capital projects that need to be done, not just the fire station. So
It starts on page 190 and the list starts
Thank
on page
you.
192.
Okay.
So you don't
great.
have to flip through.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. We're still in discussion on the $500,000 borrowing to for the construction of the new fire station. We have a motion to table it. Any more questions or discussions? Okay, all in favor, could you please indicate aye? Raise your hands.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Bye.
All right, any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
I don't know if this is truthful, but can I, now hearing what I heard now from this one, can I change my abstention in the last vote?
No, that vote is done. Don't worry about it. It's
I know, it's just a
fine.
recommendation.
Fine. You're
It was
fine.
kind of like
You're
the answer
fine.
I was looking for before we voted on that. It didn't come out.
Both of these things are connected, so it makes
Right.
great sense. Yeah, but you're good. You're fine. No problem. No problem.
You
All
can
right,
change your mind on
so-
council floor. Yeah.
Okay, so we're through the other discussion we had tonight. As always, we have a review of the City of Greenfield's budget process. Want to remind everybody that that's going to probably start with capital here in November. So here we go. Any other business that any member of the committee wants to bring up? Okay. Our next meeting would be October 18th at 2022, 6 p.m. via Zoom, unless otherwise listed. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. A second.
Second.
Thank you very much. We are adjourned at 7:35 p.m. Thank you all very much for your participation.